Well, the album has been at least 5 years in the making. In fact, you could argue that it goes back even further than that, because the nature of what the Down and Outs is, it's a side project, which means it can only be approached and what have you when you aren't busy with the mothership, as I like to call it. And there are three motherships, the Choir Boys being one, Vixen being one, and Def Leppard being, obviously for me, the main one. So we can only kind of poke and prod at it every now and again when everybody's off. Very fortunately, I wrote all the songs save for one cover. So when I had them in kind of beaten into shape, I sent the demos off to everybody and they were all more than happy to just do them as they were. So there was no arguing about arrangements or stuff like that. So it was kind of easy to do. So whenever I got home and a couple of them were free, I'd fly them into my studio and they would do their parts and then they'd go back to their job, as it were, you know. As it happens, Phil, the drummer, recorded the drums in London. Cher Ross recorded the bass parts in a house in Florida and all the vocals. So with the beauty of the internet and technology, we managed to glue this whole thing together over a long period of time. But the vision for the songs has always been there since about before the last Down and Outs album came out, which was 2014, I had at least half of these songs written. Another Man's War is the opening track, and if my memory serves me correctly, it was the first thing I wrote. We'd had this kind of big radio success with the song England Rocks, which was originally an Ian Hunter song from 1977. And I loved the way that it had this driving piano, very similar to Jerry Lee Lewis, and stabbing guitar parts over the verse. So I basically just tried to rip it off. But it's a bit more, his is a kind of a, I don't know, his is more epic sounding, it's very grandiose. Mine's a bit more just straightforward rock and roll, almost leaning towards Springsteen, I suppose. Lyrically, it's very difficult to pin down what it's all about. Another Man's War, it leans towards the fact that you're fighting for something that's not your beliefs, but you do it because you're programmed to. But I kind of always try and do it with a twist of humor. So with a lyric like, so now you're stuck behind enemy lines, so take a chance and dance through the landmines, is kind of, you know, to me it's a playful, if you're stuck behind enemy lines, you're in a bad place, but you know, what choice have you got? So I might as well just go for it, so dance through the landmines. It was my idea of turning a kind of a potentially like dark subject into a very black humor, which is something that I wanted to be able to do with the lyrics on this album. This Is How We Roll is one of only two songs that I wrote with a guitar. I literally picked up a guitar and threw my fingers on it to see where they'd go. It's a very straightforward rock song. That's, you know, there's nothing clever about it. In fact, the whole project really, I've said before, mostly to the band, but if anybody hears anything that comes after 1975 on this album, I'd be very disappointed, because it's all aimed at that period between like 69 and 74. I feel that particular track, This Is How We Roll, musically owes a lot to Mott the Hoople and Humble Pie. Some of the other songs, you can hear leanings towards the likes of Leon Russell, Elton John, Queen, Bowie, especially Bowie, Sparks even to a point. But on This Is How We Roll, it's a very straightforward, basic three-chord rocker. The title came about because it was a phrase that Guy Griffin, the rhythm guitarist, said to me while we were watching a video of the one and only, what we thought, gig at Hammersmith Odeon. We were watching it back, and he kind of shuffled up to the side of me and nudged me, and he just said, "This is how we roll." And I just got pen and paper and went, there's a song title right there, you know. And I love the fact that I can distinguish the two things, because when people say that Def Leppard rock, I can say, yes, they do, and the Down and Outs roll. So we've got both aspects covered right there. Goodnight Mr. Jones, obviously from its title, probably hints at the fact that I've written this like tribute to David Bowie. You know, I think Elton John wrote one about John Lennon, and I mean, loads of people have written tributes about lost musicians. And for me, Bowie was like the king of them all, you know. He was, as a solo artist, he was the guy that, he set the trend. He was an enormous part of what I was listening to as a child. I followed his career from the first time I heard him and right up until his death, you know. And I thought that the album Black Star was a very poignant album. When you write an album and you know you're dying, all the rules are off. You know, you can do anything you want. You know, you just say what you think. You know, you're trying to impress people. You're just putting across how you are at that moment in time, and he was dying, and you can hear it in the songwriting. And I wanted to do something that wasn't sappy, but paid tribute to how much he meant to me. So it's a pastiche to be quite honest, really. There's a lot musically, I wanted to try and rewrite or at least have it, the flavor of it lean towards something like Life on Mars. Lyrically, I was gonna just name check and, name drop a few song titles and little situations throughout his career into the lyric. But I was, the chorus really had to stand up, because I didn't want to take it all the way to the chorus with this references to songs like Space Oddity or Station to Stage and things like that, and then get the chorus and it not go anywhere. And once I had Goodnight Mr. Jones, it just hit me one day, and I just thought, the stars have your spirit, the earth has your flesh and your bones. I went, oh, thank God Jones rhymes with bones, and it worked really well. It's in a nice low key, so you can really emote. It's not all about trying to hit these high notes. It's just about singing them really well. And Paul Gearin, God bless him, pulled out one of the best guitar solos on that song that I've ever heard. And when I said to him, you know what I want, Paul, you've got to channel Mick Ronson here. And he said, you don't even have to ask. So, the whole band pulled it off on every song, but on that one specifically, I think they all got the vision. So it just became very easy and natural for all of us. The song Creatures is probably the most bubbly thing on the album. I was a big fan of the Bowie, Queen, vaudeville type stuff. Queen would have songs like Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon or, Bring Back Leroy Brown. And Bowie used to do it a little bit. I mean, apart from the laughing gnome period of his career, he also had this great song which was recorded during the Ziggy sessions, but ultimately left off the album, called Velvet Goldmine. But it has this very kind of umpire chorus. And I wanted to do something that really separated me from the Def Leppard songwriting. And it's a real simplistic two-chord, very kind of funfair piano part. And lyrically, it's just completely mad. It makes no sense, but at the same time it does. So to understand what I've just said, you really need to hear it. But I think what sums the whole thing up is that when I was piecing it together, I had this great melody, or I thought was a great melody for where the guitar solo would go. And instead of grabbing a guitar, I just whistled it, just so I wouldn't forget what it was. And then I said to Ronan, who was the producer, let's double track it just so it sounds better. And we kept doing it. And it's very difficult to whistle when you're laughing. And I was laughing, it's that kind of song, it's kind of comical. And we did this whistling solo just as a marker, but the longer we lived with the song, the longer it's like, that's not going anywhere. So we left it in, So Paul gets to do a great ride-out solo, but there's this huge big whistling solo thing in the middle, which is just very British. And the whole song is very British vaudeville. It's almost like sounds like it's been recorded now. It sounds like it could have been written in 1972, but it sounds like it was influenced by 1940s. It's a very bizarre song, and I think it's probably my favorite because of the reaction it gets when I play it to people. They just look at me going, where did you get that from? Because it's so very different to anything I've ever written. Yeah, Last Man Standing is a very kind of dark family song, if you like. I came up with a chord sequence which in its basic form sounded to me a lot like late 70s Joe Jackson, or leaning towards Todd Rundgren with these kind of odd kind of bass lines against the root note chord. Sounds overly complicated, it's not really. But it was a very moody piece of music, and obviously I wasn't going to write something that was all happy jolly. So it needed something that really grabbed you from the second I opened my mouth. And once I had this lyric, God took an axe to my family tree, some things don't feel so godly to me. I just thought, woof. Even I was getting goosebumps thinking, my goodness, I haven't written that, I've just pulled it out of the air. This is just a beautiful line. And I had to make sure that the rest of the song stood up to that. So it was all about, being the last man standing before I fall. Again, I love that juxtaposition of opposites, It's got a lot of great imagery, and that's important to me. The imagery needs to be to the forefront. It obviously needs to rhyme, because I'm not one of these guys that tries to avoid rhyme to be clever, but try and use it to the best of your ability and still get the message across. And if it's got great diction and phonetically friendly phrasing, you've got all angles covered with the lyric. So I was very proud of that one when I got it finished, and it's one song that seems to resonate with a lot of people when they hear it.